Hello, folks. Hello, friends. Welcome to Instructional Designers in Offices Drinking Coffee. Hashtag idiotic. As always, brought to you by the team here at Domino, where we empower L&D teams to develop, manage, and deliver impactful learning content at scale. And by the way, if you've ever wondered a bit about us, we're actually hosting a boot camp coming up in March, a free chance to learn more about the Domino system, including our responsive authoring option Flow, our fixed pixel traditionally learning Claro, our software simulation feature called Capture, plus lots more. We're posting up links to that. Free sign up. Join us for a week's worth of sessions and some homework and learn more about the tool. Get a short-term free subscription as well, just so you can roll up your sleeves and learn more about it as well.
And you forgot one of the best parts, Chris.
What's that?
Led by our very own Chris Van Wingerden.
Oh man, that guy.
He actually makes you do homework though, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the mean teacher.
Got to get hands-on with the tool to learn it.
That's right. You've got to roll up your sleeves. You can't just watch the webinars. Hey, gang, Christy Tucker is here with us here today. Christy, you were flashing your collectible idiotic mug as part of our time here getting started. So you've been with us before, but there's probably folks with us who haven't caught up with you on that front. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to our folks here today.
Yeah, it has definitely been quite a few years. I didn't go look up when it was that I was on the podcast before, but obviously I did find my mug this morning. Yes. So my name is Christy Tucker. I'm a learning experience design consultant, and it is tea in my mug, not coffee. I am mostly a tea drinker, but you know,
the
I know you're wanting here anyway.
The phrase would get really long if we actually said hot or cold beverage of your choice.
Of your choice,
you know,
exactly. Yeah, it doesn't. You know. Yeah. So I've been a consultant for a number of years. I've been working in online learning for 20 years, and I specialize particularly in scenario-based learning and branching scenarios. I've been blogging for, it'll be 20 years later in December, which is a lot of blog posts and a lot of writing.
Called the blog back then.
I know. It was when blogging was new and there were lots of people. It was kind of the heyday of the educational blogs and things. But these days I also do a lot of work with AI images. And so that's becoming sort of another thing. As I use my blog as a place to sort of work out loud and show my work as I'm experimenting with different tools and saying, these are the things that worked and these are the things that did not work, and sharing those on my blog with people. I do a lot of that kind of thinking out loud in progress on that.
Yeah. I mean, most authoring tools, our own Domino one included, have collections of either characters and stock photos that you can use, etc. But stock photo libraries tend to have a limit, right? Quantity alone, for instance. I know one time I was driving by on a highway and I saw a billboard and I went, oh, I used that stock photo in a project last year for a client.
Yes.
And there it was, larger than life, up on the same photo. I remember going, yeah, I know exactly which service they got that image from.
There's a model that who is definitely in a bunch of stock photos and who I see in all sorts of things, the marketing stuff, the billboards. I did work for an organization many years ago that hired people who weren't technically models to do exclusive photo shoots for them. They paid for somebody, bought out their likeness to use only in their ads so that you wouldn't see them in anything else for that reason. But of course, that's an immensely expensive thing that very few organizations are going to do that and literally buy out somebody's likeness for the advertising on the billboards. Like, that's not a thing that we're going to be doing for e-learning, generally speaking.
No, and you're looking for the images, and no matter how big the library seemed, it always wasn't big enough for whatever you were looking for.
Right.
Or even sometimes finding it, even if they did have it.
Yeah.
Or you find 3 things, but you need 5 in total with the same person, or something like that, especially as you've mentioned for scenarios where you have characters and you want to focus and carry that through. I've definitely had projects where it's like, I need 2 more, can't use these books. Even those 3 are perfect for what they are, but there's a gap. So got to go scrambling to look for others.
Yeah.
Or just the facing the other direction there's a one facing the right direction, but that smile is not really appropriate for what we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the challenges with stock images in general is there's so much of it that, it's designed for marketing. And so you tend to have happy, smiley people, which is not always what I want for training, and especially not for scenarios, especially if we're doing something with alternate paths where there's the bad examples. You're trying to show how to deal with a frustrated customer. Expressions that are angry, confused, frustrated are harder to find. Obviously, in an authoring tool, if you have that built-in library, cutout character libraries, you do tend to have some of those, but then you've got to assemble a whole scene too.
Hmm.
They can work, right? We've all built them. They're absolutely a valid choice for some things, but
They do have limits.
I saw there was a message in the chat where Kelly had mentioned about diversity too.
Yep.
I had a project several years ago where we were talking about Native American issues. Native Americans are terribly underrepresented in stock photos. Even if you go like the expensive Getty libraries, it's just hard to find.
Hmm.
And we didn't have the money to do a custom photo shoot. Like that just wasn't in the
Yeah.
budget. Nobody's got Native Americans in their custom character library. And specifically, I needed a high schooler, which is also much harder to find. It was a teacher training thing. And so I needed a high schooler who was Native American. A lot of the stock images are significantly stereotypical. And that's also a problem in the images. And so that's something that frankly was not possible previously with just stock libraries. I made do. I got some things that sort of worked for it, but it was never. It's one of those courses I'd love to go back and see what I could do with it now with AI, because I think I could do better and have more relevant images now than what I was able to do however many years ago that course was.
Yeah, and I'm sure you spent, as Kelly noticed too, that looking for some of those images can be such a time sink, in there.
Yeah.
Obviously, searches have improved too, and AI
Mhm.
has helped that. But yeah, I was reading some of your blogs, and of course, the image generation of AI has been there for a while, but it has really
Mhm.
taken off in the last year, 6 months, 9 months. And I was super impressed. I was like, here's somebody who's going through and experienced all the pain and the good.
Mhm.
And I wasn't quite getting the results I wanted all the time. So maybe tell us a little bit about your journey on that when you were starting to look at. Obviously, you've been
Mhm.
experiencing the need for something like this, or the possibility was suddenly open for you.
Yeah. So for me, part of my drive with going to AI images has been to do scenarios, right? I build these branching scenarios. I want to be able to have characters and put them in scenes and have them talking to multiple people. When I started with AI image generation, was immediately clear that that was not going to be possible, right? In 2023, early 2024, nobody was getting character consistency at all. I did find it interesting. The other place where I've gotten a lot of experience is because I've been blogging and I publish a blog post every week. I need a cover image for each one of those. And I had been doing geometric background texture kind of things and not necessarily doing anything just purely decorative, not really relevant for most of my blog posts. I could try to come up with something relevant for these, and I'll get some practice with AI image generation in the process. And so that's also part of where I got so much progress, is that every week I have a blog post and I need to make an image for it. And so that consistent practice is, as we were talking about with your
Mhm.
boot camp, you have to have hands-on practice with it. There's no shortcut to actually doing the work. And so I did a lot of early experiments, and certainly, especially in those early days, I generally migrated to more illustrated styles because truly photorealistic things were not really possible. It was very clearly AI. So it's like, well, great. Well, I know that's true. Let's just lean into it's a fantasy image, it's a illustrated image, not pretend that it's photorealistic. And then when Midjourney released the ability to do character references, so you could have a reference image and generate multiple
Mhm.
poses of that, I started experimenting with that. And that was even in 2024, I think. I mean, it actually was earlier. It was much earlier than, lots of people got excited when ChatGPT rolled out the ability to do that. But I was kind of looking at them like, okay, I've been able to do this in Midjourney for a year. You could definitely still tell it's AI. Like if I go back and look at those characters, it's like, yep, those are definitely AI characters. But I definitely could get at least one character in multiple poses and multiple expressions with good enough consistency to tell a story and have a scenario at that point. And so once I could see that, like I've definitely been hooked for that. So I
Yeah.
love it both for the characters and the scenarios and being able to create those scenes, and for the ability to do relevant images for my blog posts. And so often I'm dealing with maybe kind of abstract content, but I can create some sort of visual metaphor to represent that in a way where I can get something more specific towards that graphic.
It's really cool that you had the opportunity. You weren't sitting there facing a deadline, trying to figure these things out with the sense of risk too, that would have involved that, oh, it's
Right.
not going to work. Oh, crumb, what am I going to do now? So that's
Mhm.
really cool that you had that, I'm going to call it that safe place, really, that safe space to be able to
Mhm.
do that without risk. And you're also in control of it, no deadlines, and you're not trying to work with a client or something on that. That's pretty rare for most folks.
It is. It's given me more room. My blog gives me a lot more room to experiment.
Mhm.
People say, like, I don't have consistent styles there because frankly, I'm doing more experimentation with different styles and different illustrations and how photorealistic can I get it? Well, would I rather do something illustrated? I mean, I certainly with stock images, I frankly had mostly gone to just doing photorealistic images when I had to do stock images, because if you're trying to get a consistent look and feel throughout a course, like stock photos, line icons or flat icons, like pick an icon style and hope that
Yeah.
you can find every icon you need in that one style, maybe recolor it if you need to, right? Like you hope you can
Mhm.
find enough in one set that matches, because it was impossible to find illustrations in a
Mm.
consistent style from one artist. And now it's so much easier for me to do that with AI that I can get that consistency. And so I have more flexibility to do illustrations. And so I'm starting to do some more experimentation there. But I will say that that's part of why I've been able to do more with this, is because I wasn't trying to make anybody else have, this wasn't work for a client. And I did a lot of work on my own before I started doing it for clients, particularly.
Mhm.
These days I am doing more things for clients and where I've got colors that I need to match and things. But I was doing my own color, it's like close enough to my own branding. I'm not that precise to get the exact right shade of blue for my own branding. It's good enough. Whereas that's not necessarily good enough for some of my clients where it needs to be more precise. Now I can do it, but yeah.
So one of the things I noticed when I started playing around with some of and I'd say I dipped my toe in the water compared to your ocean, that I've kind of read some of the things there. Now I found both, one, achieving the consistency sometimes was hard, although that's improved.
Mhm.
But then on the flip side, sometimes I'd be like, you talk about blog headers or something like, oh, I want to generate a new image there. And I want something different than the last one, but it still kept the same style and everything else. Yes, some of the little things were different based on the content, but it was
Mhm.
still in there. I was like, I didn't really want that. And contrast between when you want consistency, what are some of the things that you found really help you keep it? And when you don't want consistency, to keep it from remembering the last things you were doing and thinking you're still in whatever
Mhm.
land of doing it.
Yeah. So I think the consistency does depend on what tools you're using. Pretty much everybody at this point is used to using ChatGPT or an LLM and chatting with it that way. And ChatGPT, of course, had a massive improvement a year ago. And actually, the last update that just came out for ChatGPT's image generation is a significant step forward. I do think they've adjusted some of the colors and things, so I think it is better. So in tools like that, so we'll talk about those sorts of chat tools first, and then I want to talk about consistency and some of the other tools. ChatGPT and Nano Banana Pro, which is Gemini's image generation tool, which you can similarly use chat. You can talk to it in full sentences like you do chat. You can give it kind of natural language directions of change the color of the mug on the desk from green to blue, right? That kind of prompt works. With those tools, one of the things you have to do is have that sort of reference image, right? If you want consistency, you give it an image. So if it's a character reference and you say, okay, have this person now change this element. Changing one or two elements at a time is generally easier for the tools to keep consistent. If you try to change 5 things at once, maybe it'll work, but often it'll get lost. Image generation tends to pay attention to the things at the beginning of a prompt more than it does at the end of the prompt. So if you notice that you really want to focus on the lighting or on texture or the style or something and you're not getting it, reordering things to put the important thing at the beginning of the prompt can help. I have several different kind of prompt structures of things, but that can help. If you find after a while that ChatGPT or Gemini, Nano Banana, if you've been in a chat for a while and you've done multiple iterations and they start to drift after a while, they sort of lose their context. One of the tricks for that is to just start a new chat, clean without all of the history, put the reference image in again, and do it that way. So you can do that, and that will help you get better, more consistent results with those sorts of tools. If you're trying to do illustrations and you want to get really consistent colors, I don't think now neither ChatGPT and Nano Banana are both much better at doing that now. And in fact, I've done a little bit of experimenting. You can even do things like uploading an image and then uploading a color scheme or referencing hex codes for colors in your prompt. And they're both getting more, both ChatGPT and Nano Banana are getting more accurate at saying, change the color grading to match this color scheme. And they can recolor things now. But I get weird results sometimes of they change things that aren't what I told them to change. So I find them a little problematic. For illustrations, I think there's some other specialized tools. There's, of course, this explosion of image generation tools. Like there's new stuff coming out all the time. But there are tools like Brushless or Recraft that are designed to do illustrations and are aimed at more professional work where you can upload a color scheme. So you upload your color palette. Brushless, I like for making icons. They've got a couple of icon styles. So like you can do a flat vector icon. But how many times have we tried to make a course and you can find those icons, right? You're in and you find 3 of them, but you need 5. Or you can't find that very specific. You find the specific concept in a flat style instead of a line style. Brushless has some icon styles. So you set your color palette and then you can pick these icon styles of like there's a marker scribble one. There's a line outline one where you get kind of 2 colors with it. You get a main color and an accent color. And Brushless can export as SVGs, as vectors. So you can edit it right in the tool. If the colors aren't quite there and you need to, or you want to have orange in this place instead of a light blue to make a specific element pop, you can tweak that yourself. And then you can export it as an SVG, which means you can edit it in whatever tool you're using for editing vector images. Recraft is another one that also does vector images and where you can do some more consistent colors. And Recraft, and both of these tools have built-in styles. So you can pick a style and the prompts are already for the style are already basically built into the tool. So rather than you figuring out how to prompt very specifically for a style, you can just get it. And vector images, I think, are very useful in a lot of training applications. You really do want, it's better to have a vector. And most of the things, ChatGPT and Nano Banana will sometimes give you a vector or sometimes give you a transparent background when you prompt for it. And I haven't figured out any way to get it, not consistently. I haven't found, that's not you. That is, those tools do not consistently do that. They also don't consistently, I find that ChatGPT and Gemini both ignore my directions on the aspect ratio, no matter how I prompt it. Like,
Okay.
I want this a 16:9. Okay, here's a 4:3 image. Cool. That's not what I asked for. I don't know.
I was wondering if you had any hints on that because I had like trying to tell it I want it 1280 by 720 or whatever that resolution. And at best, it may get one of them bigger than 1280. But I kind of like, I would have to cut the image and figure out
I
that.
think in those
Figure it out.
tools, when you need precise aspect ratios, you will have to do things like you can tell it to pan out and then crop it afterwards. So if you want to get more specific resolution, there are tools that will do specific ratios and dimensions. Midjourney will do it, Recraft will do it, Brushless will do it. I think Napkin can do it. Napkin's a different kind of tool. But I think that there's a bunch of different options for those. So I will say that I think image, it is one of those things of, ChatGPT can do all sorts of mathematical analysis and also not accurately count the R's in strawberry. And it also cannot count to 16:9. It just can't. And it is one of those things of it can't count. And so it can't figure out those aspect ratios. Midjourney, however, Midjourney can do it. Midjourney I also really like. I think you can get a much wider variety in styles. ChatGPT images always look like they're created by ChatGPT. And I think even with the newest output, some of that's because everybody has access to ChatGPT. We see those specific pre-programmed styles and we get to recognize them. And so like I recognize the sans serif font from that ChatGPT defaults to. I recognize it when I see it. I assume like many of you probably are also seeing that too. So I think that if you've only tried ChatGPT and you feel like it's ignoring your prompts, it is, and it's not. You can prompt better, more structured prompts, more detailed. There are some tricks to prompting better, but I do think there's a real upper limit to how good you can get it with ChatGPT, even after their newest update.
A couple of months ago, but not too long ago, I remember seeing something across my feed. Someone had done a whole bunch of generation of, I think it was like room layouts or something. And they recognized after doing a fairly large quantity of these, that it really came down to what they were getting was one of 12 patterns each time. That there was like a recognizable room layout, etc. So there were really only 12 variations to a certain extent that this could actually do for them. It was really interesting to see how far they were trying to push it to see what patterns they could discover.
Yeah. That makes sense to me that there's sort of some preset things. And ChatGPT does really go to the middle. It's one of the reasons that I do like Midjourney, because Midjourney even has a thing called a style explorer now. You can make your own styles, but you can also explore styles that other people have created. And it's such a wide variety of what people do. A lot of it's not actually practical for training purposes, but I do find some things and you can get things that don't look like every other course that's out there. So you really can get illustration styles that do things, and it's very easy in Midjourney. I mentioned reference images before. You can, if you generate even one image that you like, you can use it as a style reference and then generate a whole set of images from that. And that again has been possible for over a year in Midjourney, where other tools are now catching up to that. It may be a little less predictable than something like Brushless or Recraft, and Midjourney doesn't export to vectors. So if you're trying to do like icons, the other tools are probably better.
Marie Claire is asking in the chat, are these free tools? I'm also thinking, what are some of the pragmatics then when you're working with clients, like even figuring out budgets for usage of these or your time, et cetera, too. But let's just start with there.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say almost all of the tools that I have mentioned have at least a free trial level, or you can get some limited generation. Midjourney is one exception to that. Now, for me personally, I'm spending less on AI generation tools for images than I was spending on custom image libraries and character libraries previously. I do still have some stock image. I don't pay for an ongoing subscription because I don't use enough of it to do a monthly subscription. I do credits when there are some things that I still, safety equipment and things is too hard to get accurate in AI, and I don't trust it enough.
Good stock libraries of
Right,
those.
right. And there's plenty of stock libraries, and frankly, it is faster and easier for me to get that out of a stock library. If I want somebody with a specific personal fall arrest system, it's going to be really hard for me to get that in AI. So most of the other tools have at least a free trial level. There are also some tools. I saw FreePick was mentioned in the chat. FreePick Spaces and Flora are, I'll say, node-based canvas tools where you can mix and switch between multiple image tools. So one of the advantages of those is you pay for Flora or FreePick Spaces, you pay one subscription and you get access to 10 different tools in that one $20 a month subscription. That's a way to get a lot of different tools, because all of these tools have sort of different strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes, Nano Banana will be really smart for a while, and then all of a sudden it'll decide, oh, you wanted to put these two people in a scene? You meant like a transporter accident where it's like their bodies are squished together half and half. That's what you were looking for. No. And I had for a scenario, I could not get these, it would not put these two characters in a scene. No amount of prompting. And so I switched tools and ended up assembling those two characters. I could get together in Runway, which is actually a video tool, but you can do some image generation with it because it's video and it's multiple characters. They have ways to do. So I switched. I pieced together multiple tools. So I will say a lot of these have like a $10 a month or a $20 a month. If you are experimenting, pay for 1 month of a tool, try it out. I also think if you can only pay for one thing, going for something like Flora or FreePick Spaces. I also know that Firefly, which is Adobe's offering, also has lots. You can have access to multiple different models. So if you're in an Adobe shop, I would go Firefly and then use Nano Banana and Flux and some other models within it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you mentioned Adobe, I know they had added some AI, and I'll give another example, which was kind of a nice but interesting surprise. I was using PowerPoint a few weeks ago and noticed, wow, they have AI image generation as a native part of PowerPoint. Now, there's a whole bunch of other AI stuff that your enterprise would need to subscribe to get advantage to help you with PowerPoint, a bunch of other things that they have in. But the free part was mainly Copilot asking questions and image Copilot version in there. So I don't know if you've used that or you've started to see some difference of how they pay for it. Is it all kind of subscription, or is it like, I know when I was first looking at things, it was all about tokens.
Right.
I don't know if we've seen a lot of shift in the image area away from that, or.
I think most of these tools do have, like FreePick Spaces or Flora, you get a certain number of tokens per month. Some Nano Banana is a really expensive model, so I might use something like Flux for some things, see how far, because it's half the cost in tokens. So if I've got a lot of image generation, I'm going to see how far I can get in Flux. And then if I get stuck, I'll switch to a more expensive model. I don't use the Adobe Firefly, so I don't know if anybody in chat will know. I've seen some of it. I know that, so there is Firefly, and there's also AI within Photoshop. So I think if you have the Creative Cloud subscription, that you get access to Firefly, and then that's going to be included with it. Copilot is another one. That's what the image generation in PowerPoint is, because Microsoft is definitely going towards having things integrated within their tools. And so, yeah, I have heard from people that they're getting access to Copilot, and that's the image generation tool that people are allowed to use for work. It is Copilot is behind the scenes using mostly the same model as ChatGPT, but with some more, I think there's some more work-related restrictions on it. I have heard from people that they are not getting quite as good results. I think you can get some. It's certainly usable for some things. There is, like with ChatGPT, there's probably some upper limits on there. And if you're really doing serious, like I do a lot of scenarios and I'm going to do a lot of characters and things, Copilot may not be enough for you to get those character images, at least not without being creative about how you're making do with images that aren't quite what you want,
Yeah.
right? Which many of us got practice with. So,
That makes me think back to your earlier scenario when you were doing training and focusing on a population, in this case, American Indians who were just not well stock photoized. In that case, for those types of imagery now, because that's kind of creating from scratch, it's
right.
not illustrations, although that would be another
Mhm.
route you could take. What are you finding for that kind of situation? Is it generating things that just seem so stereotypical and not really appropriate, and not getting the younger folks right, or
Yeah.
whatever?
So bias in AI image generation is definitely a thing you have to prompt for and be aware of. All of these AI image generation tools, every one of them was trained on the stock images and things that are out there, which means if you prompt for a CEO without saying anything about race or gender, you are going to get a white man 95 times out of 100, because that's the images that it's trained on. And because just like ChatGPT sort of predicts what's likely and sometimes can amplify biases, same problem happens with AI image generation. Because it's guessing things that are likely, it will amplify bias from the training data, and then just the nature of predictions and how the AI works tends to amplify those stereotypes. But if you if you give specific prompts, you can override it. But you have to prompt you have to explicitly look for race, gender, age, clothing. I had some good success recently creating some samples of an Alaskan Native woman wearing a red jacket with a pattern on it and getting character images, and it kept the pattern, which I was pretty pleased with because it was somebody who looked like an Alaska Native, did not have like super stereotypical clothing, did have a warmer jacket because that was what I had prompted for, but you could get some of those. I've had luck getting really specific populations covered as well. So the Alaska Native, the Turkish, man, I had a terrible time finding a Turkish character for a scenario, or a Malaysian instead of, right, where you can get very specific if you prompt for it, but you have to prompt for it and ask for it. It's just like if you were looking in stock photos, if you say a happy team working together, you were probably going to get a bunch of stereotypical white, smiley, skinny people. And if you wanted something else, you had to prompt for diverse, or you had to prompt for
Use different keywords that
right.
help you
have
got
to put
and
your
filtered
keywords
out.
in.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for image generation. If you ask, the tools are pretty good now, at least racial and ethnic diversity. Age is sometimes there is a bias towards conventionally attractive people. I think, again, because they're trained on stock photos, which have the same bias. I think natural hair for Black women is an area where some tools do well. Midjourney does pretty well with it. ChatGPT has been a little iffy on that and struggles to keep it consistent with natural hairstyles. So I think those things are they are improving. One other thing that I actually want to go back and do some more experimenting and see where the tools are now. I've done it a couple times, trying to represent visible disabilities, which is another thing, right? No authoring tool has really great characters with disabilities in them. It is a challenge, right? You maybe have a wheelchair, although a lot of times in stock images and character images, it's an able-bodied person using a wheelchair designed for temporary use in a hospital or for medical reasons. It's not like a a full, it's not a real long-term,
Here's
right? Right? Or
yeah.
forearm crutches, which are a thing that people really do use,
Mhm.
or the different varieties of walkers. Those are things that I've had mixed luck getting AI to generate, partly because the AI does not have good enough source material to draw from for a
It
lot
doesn't
of
have
those.
a substantial baseline
It
to
is getting
create
better, and I
averages
do
out of.
suspect
Yeah.
that the newest versions, the newest iterations of things, I want to go back with like the newest ChatGPT. ChatGPT couldn't do it the last time I'd tried, but that was 6 months ago, and there's been a significant improvement in the model since then. I want to try it again now, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to do some more of that because I'd really like to be able to represent more people using a cane or using forearm crutches. I'd like to include those in my scenarios more, and I haven't been able to in the past. That's one of the things that I'm looking forward to being able to do with AI, and I don't know that we're quite there yet.
Well, and this makes me think of some of your earlier comments, and Catherine had some good questions about related theirs. Hey, if you bring in that reference
Mhm.
image, it really helps. And so you might have one good image on there, but it harkens back. I saw the headline quite a while back when someone used a voice that seemingly sounded exactly like Scarlett Johansson.
Mhm.
And unlike the stock art you talked about, she didn't license her voice to be used however and
Mhm.
completely copyrighted. And so Catherine also mentioned too of artists, and of course there of, you know, either it's being used as
Mhm.
reference by yourself, right? Or I don't have access to this, but I'm creating a variation of that. And it seems I don't know if you've kept up or have some thoughts on where it seems to be going in terms of copyright and some of those, I mean, valid concerns. I
Yeah.
mean, people obviously make their living off certain things,
Mhm.
and if you're just ripping off it and not giving any credit.
Yeah. So I would say, so on the legal and ethical issues, there's definitely plenty to consider here. Assume any image you create in AI is not copyrightable unless you're doing significant editing to it, which is not a problem for the things that we do for training images. I think that is generally not a problem. But I see these AI generated business logo generators, and I'm like, yeah, you don't actually
Hmm.
want to make a logo that you can never copyright or trademark for your business, probably. Like, that maybe isn't what you want. You should probably actually pay an artist for that. I think most of us are not going to be using illustrators to do custom illustrations for most work. It just isn't realistic for the kinds of work that we do. It's not zero, but we probably aren't going to be. If you're concerned about the training data, the Adobe Firefly model is only trained on images that they had licensed.
Hmm.
And so if that's one of your primary concerns, Adobe's the one that you should be going for and using their model for as much as you can, because they had a big library and they trained things on the things that were in their library. And so that's what they did. I think for the most part, I'm less worried about what it's trained on as long as it's legally obtained content. I have concerns about, like, I don't think we're going to be able to make pretend medical scans for scenarios as much as I'd like to be able to, partly because I really hope that the AI is not getting trained on individuals' actual health records and scan images and x-ray images without licensing, right? Like, I
Mhm.
don't actually want those in AI image generation. I think Anthropic, who owns Claude, the books that the court case on that, it ruled that the books that they legally bought, that they purchased and scanned and used, was okay. The books that they pirated and didn't pay for was not the right choice. I think that seems to be where a lot of the court cases are going. Personally, I find myself agreeing with James Cameron on AI and artists in general. The training data is not as much of a problem. Yes, it has scanned everything, and yes, it has used everything. The input's less of a concern than the output. As long as it is something that is actually transformative, it's like reading a bunch of websites and doing research and then paraphrasing it and putting in your own words. And I think you can do image generation that works that way. I don't make illustrations in the style of any living artist. Because I think if it's somebody who you could plausibly hire, you should go hire that person instead of copying their style. Is that a legal requirement? No, but that is my own ethical line that I don't do things in that style. I see that sometimes for like graphic novel style or manga style where they'll say
Mhm.
specifically, "Oh, you want to do it in the style of this artist." And I don't use those kinds of prompts unless it's something where I know that somebody's licensed and trained in AI to do something. And there are a few of those things out there. I think you should make we have these tools that can do infinite combinations of things. Let's make something new instead of copying somebody else's style.
Yeah, you even see that in writing
Right.
too. I mean,
Yeah.
copy that style, and it sounds like, oh, you were that NPR person or
Yes. Yep.
whatever TV personality. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for voices, I think that there is that as well. I think that the Scarlett Johansson voice is a good example. There's stuff that is made to look like somebody. I've seen that in the AI music as well, where there was a country singer that somebody trained an AI on this country singer's voice, made a song sounding like that voice, and published it and put it on Spotify without permission. That I think should not happen. I think the artist should get paid for that, whether that is visual arts or music or somebody's voice or their face for acting. I think all of those things, if you're really trying to draw from one person, that's where I find it problematic.
When you're getting started, how big is your prompt when you're first getting started typically? Like, are we 20 sentences, a small essay roughly, or?
So that's one of the, I think, mental shifts. If you're used to chatting using ChatGPT for text things, 20 sentences is a very plausible prompt length. And that's too long for most image generation.
Hmm.
So I go much shorter, generally speaking, for image generation. It is typically something like, I do a lot of things actually with phrases rather than sentences, which will work
Hmm.
even in ChatGPT and Gemini. So something like editorial photo, Asian woman, mid 40s, sitting at a computer with dual monitors in a modern office with blue walls and overhead fluorescent lights. It's really just about that long. And I will generally, that's at least where I start. Do phrases separated with punctuation, and I tend to do that. That will actually generally work for a lot of the use that you're going to do. And even in ChatGPT, you may find that you're better off doing that kind of much shorter prompt rather than the much longer prompts because they do tend to get lost even in their image generation.
Yeah.
So if you have been giving it 20 sentences and you're not happy with the results, try a much shorter, focused, pared down prompt. I think a lot of people get kind of lost with it because you're used to talking to ChatGPT. We're giving it more context is helpful. And with image generation, it shouldn't be that. It's also really easy to put in context that doesn't need to be there for an image generation because you're used to working with ChatGPT or an LLM and you're prompting and you say, "Oh, the goal of this is for something else," or he's worried about a meeting later with his boss. That's context that confuses an image generation model. So you have to prompt a little differently.
Hmm.
So that's one of the shifts
Interesting.
for prompting. ChatGPT and Gemini are better at those sorts of sentence things, but I actually find I still get pretty good results prompting them with shorter phrases. You can also do things where you do sort of a list. Now, sometimes you'll see if you look at people doing this, there's something called JSON prompting, which is a whole like XML, it's very structured. You can do something lighter weight than going through that full structure, which is a very specific syntax. You can do something like subject, white man, clothes, construction hat, yellow vest, jeans, steel-toed boots. Setting, colon, and just kind of do it in lines. And you can do that. And that may also get you those tools do tend to do well with that kind of like labeled and structured. Even if you're not, I think JSON structuring is overkill for most L&D folks. I think that is like, yes, you may find that if you've been doing a lot and you find you're hitting an upper limit, okay, then maybe you do need to upgrade, level up to that. But I think it's overkill for most people. I think you can do it the simplified version of the style of the image, the subject, the action, some note about the setting, maybe the lighting. I think there's also a skill in learning how to describe the setting and what you want. Like I've found myself having to learn more language of, well, how the heck do I describe that illustration style? Now, one thing you can do is if you find an illustration that you like and you don't have you don't have rights to maybe use it as an actual reference image, but you can put it into an LLM and say, describe the style of this image with the phrases so that then you can go use those descriptive phrases in a prompt without actually using somebody's IP that you don't have permission to use.
Mhm.
Done using that directly as a reference. Yeah.
Correct.
It's sort of
Or
a
you say,
separation.
"Here's
of-
Yeah. Or
Mhm.
here's 3 images that I like. Tell me what's the same about these so that I can use those 3. So again, you're not drawing directly from one, but you can say like, okay, what's the similarities? What should I be calling out for this? You can have ChatGPT write you a prompt for an image.
Mhm.
I will say it does tend to go a little longer than is probably necessary.
Mhm. So what I'm hearing from you is that while a picture may be worth 1,000 words, it does not necessarily require 1,000 words.
Excellent. Yes,
Christy, we have a thing coming up with you too, don't we? Beyond this
We
session
do.
here today.
It's actually a hands-on session, which
Mhm.
it's already been posted up there. Please sign up. I'm excited about this because I'm going to be doing some hands-on probably in the background while you're doing
Yeah.
it, even though I'm joining the webinar.
Yeah, this is what we're full circle back to the beginning. You need hands-on practice. You just need practice to get better. This is a skill. You can develop the skill, but you need to get practice with prompting. You need to have some guidelines of how to prompt. So we'll talk about some frameworks of how to prompt, some of the differences for things. I'm also going to show a bit of how you do things in different tools, but we'll talk about how to prompt for icons, how to get some consistency in colors and styles, and how to do characters a little bit. But just in general, how to get better results from your image prompting, regardless of which tools you're using, to be able to get something and to get some more cohesive visuals out of that. And you'll get some
Cool.
time to experiment when it's not a project and you're not under a deadline, because that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
part of what you need.
Exactly. Awesome. Very cool. So folks, if you haven't clued into that yet, there's a link or two in the chats that we've got running here. I think we've also probably got it up on our website too, Paul, to
Yep.
find info there on domino.com.
Right out to domino.com/webinar.
There we go.
So you'll find it.
Excellent. Christy, this has been a really cool conversation. You're also coming up at
you.
some, well, you mentioned, I think along the way, upcoming conferences and stuff that folks might be also able to find you at.
Yes, I'll be at the training conference in Orlando in a couple of weeks and presenting there on branching scenarios. IDTX is the other online conference that's next week, talking about
Okay.
many scenarios. So it's a busy time.
Excellent. So folks, lots of opportunities to also continue connecting with Christy and learning more. Christy, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a cool conversation,
Thank you.
a really neat time. We're so glad that you made the time to join us here today.
Thanks
All
very
right.
much for having me.
Folks, instructional designers and offices, drinking coffee or the hot beverage or cooled beverage of your choice, and doesn't even have to be in a mug, is brought to you by Domino. Our platform Domino One helps learning and development teams develop, manage, and distribute their L&D content efficiently at scale. Check us out at domino.com. Don't forget, we earlier mentioned the boot camp that we've got going on. If you want to roll up your sleeves and get a bit more than a demo sense of the tool, that's coming up in March. You can also hit our website to learn more about that too. Let's dance on out, gang. Hey, have a great rest of Wednesday, folks.